Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Winzertalk that is an open stream for everybody. Um, I hope that many people are going to be in attendance. We have the first winemaker here with us, Luca Speri from the Speri family winery, who's tell us uh, wines about the wine region of Valpolicella, about the Monte Sant'Urbano, which is their cru that it's a monopoly, right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
actually 99% property of the family, so we are almost
oh,
there.
okay. There's like one small plant somewhere that belongs to someone else.
Yeah, but they don't put the wine in bottles, so they just sell the thing. So we are safe at the moment. Is we can considering a monopoly.
Okay, that's great. Um, so yeah, just so that everybody knows what we're going to be up to. There's going to be a little bit of introductory words, and afterwards we're going to taste three wines by the Spedi Winery. Um, and yeah, let's maybe start with a little introduction of Kölner Weinkeller, just in case maybe not everybody knows Kölner Weinkeller because attendance is open to everybody now. Um, the cellar itself was made by Cornelius Stusken, who used to be a supermarket owner in the region of Cologne. Um, and he had this idea of bottling his own wines and selling them at a profit, which is something that was very smart at the time. But after a while, it became less viable. And for a couple of years, or well, 30 to 40 years, the cellar was more or less unused until the whole Stusken company came into Rewe. Your hold on. Yeah, I don't know. Um, and I just had an echo. I'm sorry. We had some technical hiccups there. I was hearing myself from 10 seconds back. So yeah, this is how the um, 85 years ago that the celery was dug up. And since the 1980s, it belongs to the Rewe Group. And I'm going to cut this short. Now it is the Kölner Weinkeller, which is the fine wine merchant. And yeah, this is the Kölner Weinkeller. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Speri Viticoltori. You are probably older than the Kölner Weinkeller, aren't you?
We are now at the seventh generation. We started to make our wines in 1870s, we can say. So yeah, we have quite a long history. Yeah, it's wine in our region is a long thing. Valpolicella is a region that take the name from a Roman, ancient Roman, Latin, we can say, word. So the original name, thousands of years ago, was Vallis Polis Celle, and that means valley of many cellars. Okay, so it's a name that makes you understand that the history in the wine production here, it's we can say somehow normal, but it's not normal that the same company, the same family, the same winery runs a business for so long with no changing, with no, selling things or no dividing. So this is a quite a unique thing. We are very unique for the region, and of course we are because of our history. We are based and we have the vineyards in the Classica area of Valpolicella. That is the historical part. Valpolicella is a very large area of wine production, but there are two main regions: the Classica and the not Classica region. Classica, as the word says, is the historical part, is the original part, is where everything began. Then the North Classica was allowed to produce this wine from 1968 as an enlargement of the Classica region. And the nice thing is that you can see on the bottle, when you see Classico world, means that it's coming from the restricted, smaller Classica area. That is the one that is closer to the Garda Lake, closer to the Alps, with a very different microclimate. So, we are very attached to the history and to the real, beginning of the wine business in Valpolicella as we know it today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you look at the slide that we have here, the grapes that you guys use are like very specific grapes. Maybe you can talk just a little bit about those.
Yeah,
they're not grown anywhere else, are they?
Yeah, this is one of the things that makes our region very special. I told you that we have a region, a micro region that is a very unique, because if you think about where is Valpolicella, we are in Veneto, between, just to give an idea to the people, we are between Venice and Milan. Okay, so we are exactly, we can say, in the middle of the north of Italy. So where usually it's quite cold, when summers can be very humid. But we have something different from all the rest. That is a geographical factor. So we have the Garda Lake, that is the biggest lake in Europe. So it's a very important thing for us, and the Alps on a little bit on the north of Valpolicella. So this thing create a kind of amphitheater of a Mediterranean weather in the middle of the north. So here we have the Garda Lake that brings some fresh air during the summertime, that brings the winters not too cold, and the Alps that stop the cold wind coming from the north. In fact, if you come in Valpolicella, if you come to the Garda Lake, you can easily find a lot of olive trees. You can see in the picture on the top here, where you see that house on the top of the hill on your right, you see all the olive trees. So that is, yes, exactly. There are all of it, olive trees, and everybody knows that olive trees need the Mediterranean weather. So the fact that we have these grapes, it's because of the soil. I mean, they're very delicate grapes. They're very difficult to grow. And to grow these grapes, you need to have the specific weather. Imagine that when Amarone became famous in we can say between 80s, 90s, that probably was the explosion of Amarone as an appellation. A lot of producers tried to plant these grapes all over the world, from California to Argentina to wherever, everywhere. But thank God there was no kind of results, because they need this specific weather. So beside the technique that is very unique for the Amarone, we have also a kind of terroir driven meaning of the wine. So Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, Molinara, grapes that exist only here and in the suburbs of Valpolicella. I mean, even in Garda Lake, you can find these grapes, like for the Bardolino wine, that is a completely different wine, but it's made exactly with the same grapes that you can find in the Bardolino area. So we are historical, we are classic, so we need to preserve this kind of idea. So this is the reason why our portfolio is so small. Our decision is to be very simple and clear and clean too. So we produce only the classic appellations: Valpolicella, Valpolicella Ripasso, Superiore, Amarone, Recioto. That's it. No white wines, because Valpolicella is not a region of white wines. No rosé, no sparkling. We don't follow the trends, but it's a 100 and something years, 150, 60 years that we make wines. We know how to do it. We want to be professional producers of Valpolicella. And I think that also, it's we do not just produce and sell wine. I always say we present a wine region. On our wines there is written Valpolicella. I want that people that drink my wines understand what Valpolicella is. I don't want to put just 50% of Cabernet because people like tannins. I don't care. I mean, behind our name there is a region, and this is what we want to show to the world. So
Right. Because I think it's very interesting how this technique of drying grapes has become so widespread, and it's like there's some wines that, especially here in Germany, are super popular, and you can buy them everywhere, which are from Puglia, made mostly with Primitivo grapes, but they're also dried up a little bit, like trying to make a well, let's not call it an Amarone, but like using the same methods that are traditional in Valpolicella, and I was just trying to make it totally clear that this is a very, very different, very traditional. You're not following the trends. You guys were setting the trend for a while.
Yeah. I mean, if you consumers, us as producer, we need always to go back to the reason why things were made. Appassimento for Amarone was made back in the days for giving richness to grapes that basically they were not rich enough. Because our Valpolicella Classico, if you taste the wine, is made exactly with the same wine, with the same grape. Sorry, but it's a wine that is so beautiful but light. It's light, 12% alcohol, easy, fresh, great acidity. And back in the days, here there was not other grapes. There was not the Primitivo. There was not the Cabernet. There was not the Merlot. So the only way to have richness, to have alcohol, to have intensity, was to dry the grapes, because our grapes, if you look at them, if this picture is nice, are quite big bunches, big clusters of grape, and big berries with a strong skin. What does it mean? That you have a lot
if you
of
look
juice.
at the fingers, and
Exactly.
you kind of tell that they're huge. They're almost like plums.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the good and bad of this grape. The bad because they don't give a lot of structure, and this is why Valpolicella is so light but nice and easy. So every section has the quality, of course. But in terms of wine, we can say that Valpolicella is light. But on the other side, if you dry this grape, you still have, in the end of the drying process, after 100 days, you still have some juice. If and this is fundamental, because if I make the drying process of 100 days that I make with Amarone, if I make it with a Cabernet, after 30 days, I have only seeds and skin, and I cannot make any, and I cannot make any wine because there is no juice in it. And the same thing with the acidity, because the drying process put the acidity down during the time. Okay, the acidity that starts here goes down during 100 days. So you need to have grapes that has a lot of acidity. Valpolicella Classico is a simple wine that has a lot of acidity, and this is why in the end of the drying process, with that richness, with that sugars, with that alcohol, in the good Amarones, we still have acidity. I think that appassimento is something that, I don't want to be unpopular, but I said before that nobody can copy our grapes because you can plant it only there. So these grapes are not exportable. The method can be exported, of course. So it was the only way to copy Amarone, export the method and use appassimento. Then the result is completely different. Too many times, I would say 90% of the time, I think that the appassimento method is just an excuse to make wines that are low in acidity and high in residual sugar. And this is not the origin of Amarone, because many times these wines, to justify the appassimento, they have a very, high alcohol, high sugars, very big and jammy. And this is not what we want to make with our wines, So it's important that the names are different, because that is appassimento. This is Amarone.
Yeah.
Two things.
Shall we start trying the first one?
Of course. Ripasso. We can start with Ripasso.
Exactly. Let's start with the. Please.
No. It's good. It's good. Sorry, I sometimes I speak way too much and too and too fast.
Oh no worries. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. This method is like is another thing that is very specific to your region,
Yeah,
the ripasso method, which means that you're reusing the Amarone, the
yeah,
grapes, right?
yeah.
Maybe you tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Ripasso in Italian means repass, so pass again. So the name of the wine is coming from the name of the technique. So the ripasso is the technique that we use to make this wine. Basically, what we do is taking the normal Valpolicella Classico, so the simple wine, the 12.5 alcohol wine that we made in September, and we pass this wine through the skins of Amarone. And this happens in January, February. You know, Amarone, as I mentioned before, is made by dried grapes. So we harvest in September, we leave the grape dry till January, and then there we make the fermentation. When we finish the fermentation of the Amarone, we separate the wine Amarone that goes to age from its skins. So the skins are like a sponge full of Amarone juice, basically. You know, so what we do in that moment when we have these skins full of juice is to take the simple Valpolicella, put it together with its skins, and leave everything together for 10, 12 days. So what happened is like a second fermentation of the wine
Exactly.
Valpolicella together with the skins. So this is a great method to, you know, to make an upgrade, we can say. So in the same time you can have the freshness and fresh fruit that is coming from a nice, crispy and vibrant Valpolicella, and some richness and intensity and smoothness coming from the skins of Amarone.
Mm.
So this is a wine that it's very smart for many reasons, and I think that the main reason is that it's coming from the very poor way of living, because everybody now in the wine business is talking about how cool is, how fancy, how trendy, but the origin of Ripasso is all about the need. Was a need to don't throw away the skins with something that they still can give. This
Mm.
is coming from the very poor way of living of agriculture in every region of the world. So here we were in January with something that was so rich like Amarone skins, and was a pity to throw it away. And so was a reason was that method invented by our generations before, was just to not throw away something that was still usable somehow.
Yeah.
So that is the origin. Now, of course, everything is studied. There is a science behind. A lot of producers like us, but many other, did this method more and more specific, more and more detailed, and now we have great wines we made with this method.
Right.
So
It's
you
actually
know,
a style of wine that I particularly like because it has both the best of both worlds in a way. It has like this little bit of bitterness and full bodiedness of the Amarone without being like super broad and strong and powerful
yeah,
but it also has like a little bit of elegance and lightness to it,
yeah.
which I
Yeah,
find particularly appealing.
that you said a great thing about that, because this is what we look for. I mean, many times traveling the world, I see people calling this wine like with the nickname like Baby Amarone, and I can understand the reason why they do it, because it's a very fast way to make understand what it is. But I think that this wine is more like a upgraded Valpolicella. We feel this wine not to be a kind of jammy big wine, but we feel and we want to have the freshness, the drinkability that is typical on our Valpolicella, but with more complexity, with more deepness, with more structure. But we are
Yeah.
very far from the fat cooked fruit like that many of repastos has, because of this method that I told you, the re-fermentation, you can have, very different choices in the winemaking profile. So it's easy to find in the market repastos that are a little bit more on the baby Amarone side. So bigger, richer, with cooked fruit, like a little bit of oxidation sometimes, lower acidity. Here is a very Valpolicella driven ripasso. So, of course, intensity, layers of taste, complexity, wine that stays long in mouth, smoothness that is part of the game of ripasso because the tannins of Amarone are very smooth. So you can feel it also here, but you will never have that kind of jammy notes, that kind of
Mhm.
cooked fruit like, that kind of oxidation. We want to preserve all the real freshness. That, in one word, I say elegance. This is something that we want to have in all our wines.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's very successful. um,
Thank you. But it's
it's
a
a very elegant wine, and
yeah,
it has lots of possibilities. I think in combining it and
yeah.
drinking it a little bit chilled, and you can go so many ways with this wine, which
Yeah,
is something that I love about it.
yeah. I think it's a very versatile wine. You can have it, because of the smoothness. You can have it even by itself or with aperitivo. Because of the intensity and the acidity, you can have it with a lot of different kind of food. I think personally that on my wines that are the five wines of Valpolicella, probably is the most versatile we have, and is a wine that now that is young in the beginning of his life. It's great because it's very balanced and clean, and it's great to drink now. But it's a wine that you can easily drink it for 10 years from the harvest that you see on the label. So
Mm.
it's something that is doing quite well. Just technical thing, aging is 1 year, large barrels, Slavonian oak.
Hmm.
We usually do not work with our wines with barrique. We are very traditional in that way. So in Italy in general, traditional means large or medium sized barrel.
Yeah.
So this is what we use, but not because barrique is bad. Barrique is a great tool, of course, but our wines are very delicate. Our fruit is very specific, so we don't want to cover it anyhow with a different kind of oak. We need, for what we think, a kind of oak that is very kind of neutral, that permit us an evolution of wine without covering anything with different tastes. So this is our feel.
Right. Right.
Then, then
One
uh,
thing.
just uh, just one thing that is quite important, talking about the winery and also to understand the wines at its best. Our choice is to be very, very simple in what we do. So we do not buy grape, we do not buy wine. Everything we do is coming from our own vineyards. So this is a quite a unique thing in Valpolicella. So is 100% control of the production. And and the good thing is that we are a huge family, not a big, a huge family, because we are 9 members now. We are 9 members of the family, and we follow every step of the production. So from the vines to the bottling, there is somebody of the Speri family behind. So I would say that beside the quality and beside the control, we have also a very identified kind of personality behind the wines, because we make the wines that we like.
Yeah, and you have like a common vision. There's
Yeah.
a very old German advertising slogan that goes, "Dafür stehe ich mit meinem Namen," which means, for this I stand with my name. Basically, I'm putting my name on this because that's exactly how I want it to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, that totally applies. Moving on to the next wine, we're going to the Valpolicella Superiore.
Yeah.
Um, and superiore is actually, it's hard to speak Italian and English in the same sentence. Superiore is actually the name of the wine style, right?
Yeah, actually, is part of the appellation system. I mentioned before a little bit about Classico, and as you can see, the name of this wine, Classico, is a geographical part. So
Yeah.
Classico identified that this wine comes from the specific historical area. Superiore for a Valpolicella means that needs to have minimum 1 year aging. Doesn't it's not requested oak or not oak, but just 1 year before releasing, and minimum 12.5 alcohol before 12.5 alcohol minimum requested to be released. So is actually a way to say, okay, this is a superior, this is a higher level of Valpolicella. Okay. Then, of course, what I told you is what is the minimum request to make this wine. In this case, we did something much higher that we position, and it's quite strange for the world of wine, but we position this wine at a higher level than a Ripasso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking maybe for like our spectators. First of all, for our spectators, I've already written into the YouTube chat. You can always post questions to Luca. You can also post them in German if you want, and I'll translate them. And we will try to use your questions and come up with an answer. But yeah, also we were talking, like Luca and me, we were talking before, and actually the original order that we wanted to taste the wines in, or that we as Kölner Weinkeller, the order that we had put was this first, and after that the Ripasso. But Luca suggested we turn this around because, like you said, you're positioning this wine at a higher level.
Yeah. But this is an historical thing because, first of all, the Ripasso is an historical method, but was not an historical appellation, because the appellation of Ripasso was made just in the 2000s. So was not a wine existing as an official appellation like Barolo, Chianti, Brunello, Amarone. Was just a name used, but with nothing behind in terms of flow. So our choice as a family was not to make Ripasso back at that time. So our choice, and the choice of my dad and my uncles back in the 70s, was to create a great wine that was not made by a Ripasso method, but that was a completely 100% Valpolicella terroir driven. So, I still remember, my dad always say me that, that at that time they were saying that they wanted to create a wine that when people drink it, they say it's a great wine, but in the same time, finish the bottle. Okay, so that means a higher level wine, but with the soul of a Valpolicella, that is basically drinkability, freshness, elegance. So the only way to reach that goal was, first of all, to go in the top vineyards of the family, the Sant'Urbano vineyard. So
yeah.
It is a top of the hill, is volcanic soil, is old vines, is a lot of air, a lot of breeze, it's a cooler climate. So you have all the elements to create the best fruit possible. So that was the first choice. Go to the grape, go to the origin, go where the real quality is. Second thing, to reach on a higher level, was to borrow a little bit the appassimento method from the Amarone. So you said good things before about appassimento method, about appassimento style, about appassimento things that you can find in the market. But appassimento was used from ever in our region to concentrate something that was not concentrated enough before, was not used to make big, bold, heavy, sweet wines. Okay, so the appassimento we use to make this wine is just a very slight appassimento. It's 20 days, in which we lose 5-6% of weight. And the goal of this appassimento is not to make a huge wine; is to make a complex wine where you can find layers of taste, where you still have a great acidity, where you still have a lot of where you have a low residual sugar, and when the alcohol is not that high. Because to make this wine, the goal is to make a wine that gives a lot in your mouth, a lot of taste, but with a low level of alcohol, and with a very high acidity that brings it very long in the aftertaste. So, complexity is the key for a wine like that. It's 13.5 alcohol. It's very intense, very rich, but it's never heavy. I always say this is the soul of Valpolicella that is brought to the top. This is what we love to make with this wine. And the aging,
I think actually the
please.
the comparison between the two wines, the Ripasso that we had before and the Superiore that we're having now, is actually quite interesting to draw direct comparisons between the two, because while the Ripasso has like two sides, it's the panorama, it's like very broad, and you have like this aspect of like the Amarone on the one side, and then you have like the freshness of the Valpolicella on the other side, and you have like a panorama. Like this is probably like almost the same things, but they're like concentrated into like one focus point.
Yeah,
yeah. And it's kind of the same idea, but executed in very different ways, which I find super interesting.
That's exactly a very nice explanation of the difference between the two wines, because if you think about it, they're exactly the same varietals, the same grade, the same wine region. So the soul is exactly the same, but there are two methods that make two different things. They are, I always say, these two are brothers, both 13.5% alcohol, both the same category of wine. Even the price is not that far, but they are two completely different things when you drink it. So Ripasso is more versatile, it's easy, it goes always well. This is a wine that needs something to eat, in my opinion. Technically, here we have much more acidity and much less residual sugar. This one is drier, but the great thing is that it seems smoother because the drying process make the tannins very soft and silky. So the finish is much longer and more complex. And I think that this wine is a great wine for red meat in general. It's something that I like with red meat, with pasta, with a ragu sauce, something a little bit stronger, than what we had with ripasso. Consider that for this Valpolicella Superiore, we make a very long aging, considering is a Valpolicella, because we keep this wine 2 years in 500 liters French oak, plus almost 1 month in bottles. So it's a Valpolicella that we release after 3 years. It's makes you understand the category of this wine. But the aging is something that we need to do, because it starts with an acidity and with a very lot of corners in the beginning, because this wine, coming from the cooler climate, coming from volcanic soil, has a lot of corner, and when it's young, is always too young. So and this is just to make you understand, and to make understand to the people that listen to us, how appassimento can work. You still have a wine after the appassimento that is vertical, that is sometimes too acidic, and we need to wait because it needs to become smooth. So it's a kind of appassimento worked on a different way than the appassimento style wines that you can find on the market.
I think it makes sense that you're using French oak for this one too. I wouldn't have guessed, because my palate is not super specific. But once you told me, it kind of makes sense. If you drink one and the other, if you compare them, I think you can almost tell. Okay, this is what the French oak makes, and this is what the Slavonian oak makes.
But consider that the French oak that we use here is very low or not toasted, so it's kind of neutral, kind of French oak, and we use it for 3 to 4 passages. So we are not crazy about the new oak. Of course, we give some turns of that, but with this energy, with this acidity, with this freshness, we need to use the smaller barrel. We also tried. We also tried in the 80s with the barrique, because it was a test, but that was a little bit too much for the delicacy of this wine.
Right, and like no, at least not that I can detect, like no strong toast notes in the wine. It's just the structure of it that sort of gives away the French oak in this one. Shall we pass on to the next one? What do you say?
Sure. Let's go to the Amarone.
Which one do you have in the glass now? Are you
The 15 Amarone. I'm with
okay,
you.
perfect.
I'm at the same level of you guys.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, 15.
No,
That was actually a very nice vintage. Not only in Italy, but you know, all over the place. So Amarone is the wine that made the Valpolicella put the flag on the map. We can say, especially in the last 30 years, that put the flag in the map, talking about the great wines. I always think
mm,
that if you talk about great wines in Italy, you can talk about these classic appellations, Barolo, Brunello, Amarone. In the last years, some other canes, but I think that these three are the classics, and Amarone is for sure very different from the others. It has a very
right,
unique personality because of what we said so far. I mean, the grapes are completely unique. The drying process that is crazy and difficult and unique as a method. So, we have a huge respect on this wine because it's the history of our appellation, and this is why we make Amarone Santurbano only when the vintage is good. So this wine is not
mhm,
produced every vintage, and this is also the reason why our family produced just one Amarone. It's quite normal in the region to find producers that make the entry level, the single vineyard, the riserva, 3 4 different levels, to have different styles, to have different price range. And I
mhm,
understand it's completely right, but from the real beginning, our family produced just one Amarone that it is the best we can do, basically. So no entry level,
yeah,
just the Santurbano, only the top single vineyard. That's it. The other vineyards are 100% for the other wines. So
mhm,
it's something that make us quite proud. It's also true that Amarone is an appellation that really started in the 50s. We can say as a name on the market, and back at that time we were like 10, 15 wineries, not more. So
mhm,
we can say one of the pioneers, one of the first wineries that started to produce these wines. Just to give you an idea, nowadays there are like 330 different companies producing Amarone,
yeah,
reaching a total number of more than 16 million bottles. So it became a big monster in terms of numbers too. So we are there from ever. This is one of the first example made in the history. So we need to treat it at best, and with
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of with a lot of respect.
I think it's such an interesting wine style because it has so many flavors and it's super age worthy.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
once drank, I think, 5 years old or something,
Ah,
and
even longer.
yeah,
A vintage like this, like 15, that was a phenomenal vintage. You can keep it easily more than 30 years, 35. It
mm,
it depends. It depends, but we are talking about something that if is well made, and if is made, in my opinion, in a classic way, so with very nice acidity and with low residual sugar, it can really live.
yeah, yeah. I think it's super interesting because it's so flavorful and it has like so many aromas, both
Yeah.
like both aromatic like in your nose, but also like if you put it in your mouth, like you have so many flavors and it continues to evolve on your palate,
Yeah.
and it will also continue to evolve in your cellar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the one that I had, which I'm not sure, but let's say it was 25 years ago old, it was not like super good. It was just a regular sort of supermarkety style
Uh, okay.
Amarone, and it was like it had all these morbid uh, old dry like all those flavors, but that was super interesting as well. It was like we had it at the finish of dinner, and it was almost like drinking an old port or something. Like not sugary, but like it was sort of like it went in a similar direction. Um,
Yeah, but with Amarone, it's clear and it's easy to see even in the market that there are quite a big differences. I mean, an interpretation too. I mean, this is a kind of classic way to think about the Amarone that is a little bit more on the dry side, freshness, elegance, finesse, not overripe, and the modern style that probably is a little bit more focused on the heaviness, on the richness, on the intensity,
mhm,
the mature ripe fruit, the kind of jammy approach that it's probably better for the end of the meal than for the meal. The classic style like this one probably is more food friendly, is more long term aging, but everything is based on what is your goal as a producer. In this
mhm.
picture is great because you see the vineyard. This is a
Yeah.
vineyard that is all on terraces, top of the hill, cooler climate, volcanic soil. So it gives a very unique minerality and very unique acidity to the wine. So we follow the nature of the vineyard to make this wine. And you have to know that Amarone back in the days was made only on this kind of vineyards, on the hillside, on the cooler climate, in order to preserve the acidity. So the
Yeah. Yeah.
production was small, was made on this kind of idea, because Amarone, as all the other wines, was a wine to have with food. The trend of having wine by itself is something of the last 30 years in the world, not in Italy and in the classic wine regions. So
Yeah,
this is
that's a very German thing, maybe, to have wine on its own. Actually, it's the
No, but it's not. It's not only German. I mean, it's. I think that is a worldwide thing. But
mm,
when people ask me what classic does it mean for you, I always say that classic is considering wine as part of the meal. So to me,
right,
classic is freshness, elegance, low residual sugar, backbone of the acidity, minerality. A wine that when it's on the table, you finish the bottle, even if it's an Amarone. So,
yeah, yeah,
so the tough part, the difficult part of making an Amarone like this is to make a wine that has a huge concentration, richness, intensity, because we dry the grapes more than 100 days. So it's a very long drying process. But in the same time, preserve all the fresh part, all the acidity, the crunchy fruit to avoid oxidation, to avoid the heaviness that sometimes Amarone can have. My father always say that, Amarone by nature, because of the drying process, is a monster. Our job as a producer is to make that monster gentle, not to
okay,
make it even bigger. So it's
interesting, yeah, hmm
this is how we work to make this wine. And we are tasting now a 2015 that it's 9 years old. It's 7 years old, and it's still a baby in my opinion. It's still growing.
yes,
It's
yeah,
still very food friendly. Of course, it's evolving. It's not just fruit here, but is coffee, chocolate, tobacco is coming, and they're starting to knock
right,
at the
right,
door. But this is the goal we want to have. Very
yeah,
serious product to that can be good now and can be unique in the future.
right, yeah. It's I think it's very very interesting what you're saying about this having to be like a classic wine in the Italian sense of classic, which means like you think of wine as not as a beverage, not as a refreshment. You think of wine as
Yeah.
a part of your meal. It's like part of every course.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's very important to keep that in mind when trying these wines. And we're not doing it justice by trying it like this. We should be sitting at a table and eating something.
No, then of course, Amarone, the greatness of a good Amarone, it is always there. I mean, people that love wines can understand the quality of this wine, but the concept of elegance that now is coming back. I see, 10 years ago, when I was going around the world with my Amarone to show the wines to the buyers and to the medias, and the trend was more on that, big jammy wines, and I was with this Amarone saying, guys, this is our philosophy of the freshness. This is following the vineyard that has the cooler climate. But the fine dining was there, because the fine dining
Mm-hmm.
was there. There's great sommeliers, but the big mass drinkers were on the different stuff. Was a very easier way. I see that now things are changing. I think there is much more culture evolution in the taste. Elegance, finesse is more and more present in the market, and we are seeing that this style that we always did is coming back, and we are very
Mm-hmm.
proud of that, because we always did it. As I said in the real beginning of our chat, we are not selling a wine, and we are not following the trends. We are here to show what Valpolicella is deeply,
Mm-hmm.
and we are happy that people came back to the taste that we love. So
Right.
I hope it will be a trend that will continue.
If you told me before, uh, you you are in this as a family, and all of you guys follow like a sort of like a common idea, a common ideal of wine,
Yeah.
which is probably best represented here.
Mhm.
But what I would want to ask is there any sort of inspiration? Is there anything that you would say, okay, we're not following any trends, but we found this that we found super interesting, and this is like informing our wines.
Making wines in a classic region with an historical name like us is super nice, but is also challenging sometimes. I always say everybody that classic doesn't mean old, because old was like 60 years old when here there was no money to buy a new barrel. So the barrel was like 200 years old barrels, used and reused and dirty. And there was no technology. There was not the money to buy technology. There was no science studying the wine business and the wine industry. So that classic seems dirty and not precise. Okay, we need now to follow the classic approach. That is what I told you before. So the elegance, the finesse, the drinkability, the idea of wine as part of the meal, but with the top of technology, with all the best that now we can have, with the science, with the school, with the investments in the cellar and in the vineyard. So we are every year experimenting something new. Every year we are doing new things, but with the goal to bring the classic approach at its best quality possible. So,
Mhm, mhm.
in the 80s, my dad tried to plant the Guyot system for the vines, but was a try to see how was the quality there. But now, after 6 months, he decided, not 6 months, but after a few years, he decided to get back on the traditional pergola that you see in the pictures in this
Right,
photo.
right.
So because we think that there we have the quality that we want. Everything in our cellar is temperature control. Everything is with no oxygen in it. Everything is with the no sulfides till the end. All our production is organic certified and sustainable certified, and we are the most important organic winery in Valpolicella Classica. So there is a lot of evolution, there is a lot of study, there is a lot of investment behind. But the goal is always to make that kind of classic approach at the top of the quality. So,
Mhm.
and we make experiments every year. I mean, my cousin, that is an enologist winemaker, is making every year a crazy thing, like for ourselves, like a Metodo Classico, or a rosé wine, or a white wine made by Corvina. So sometimes they are very
Mhm.
good, sometimes are not even drinkable. But is the way is the way we make our own experience. Is to have fun with our passion.
Right, right. Exactly. It's important to not be, like all caught up in this idea of like wine has to be
Yeah,
this, wine has to be that, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to mix things up a little bit. So because we're nearing the end, we still didn't get any questions through the chat. I have to encourage everybody to put the questions out there now, because a little bit of time. So what's there on YouTube is not the actual time it is. Like you are a little bit behind, but that means that only means that you it would be best to like start with the questions now, so that we can bring them in before the Winzertalk ends. But one question, two questions that I have, and they're totally not related. So the first one will if here the symbolic, isn't it?
Sorry, Michael, I lost you for a while, and I didn't
Yes.
listen.
Like what? Why did you like? What is the advantage of the pergola for?
The advantage of the pergola is, I mean, it depends the style you want. That is the key, because pergola has a little bit less concentration in the various respect Guyot. Guyot has much more plants per hectare, so has a little bit more concentration.
Sorry, for people that are not so much into wine growing, pergola means that the wines grow like this. They go up on like sort of, how high is it? Like 2 meters? Maybe?
No. The main part of the vine goes like 150, 160, and then there are two lines that goes on two sides of the main part of the tree, and it goes like a Y, like the letter Y, So it develops on high sides. So there's a lot of vegetation, a lot of leaves. Back in the days, I mean,
and Guyot on the other hand is like a bush. It's like
exactly.
much farther down. It's easier to cut off leaves and stuff like that. So it's more manipulation of the plant, maybe.
Yeah, basically with pergola, everything needs to be made by hand. With Guyot, you can also use, but it depends by what you want. But with the Guyot, you can make everything with machines like pruning, harvesting, stuff like that. With pergola, it's not possible. So there is a big difference also in the cost of maintaining and making the wines with these things. Beside that, pergola was always used in Valpolicella region because our grapes are very generous in terms of production, in terms of vegetation. So they need to go. You cannot limitate too much. Otherwise, we think you lose a little bit of the balance in the grapes itself. Guyot came in the region in the 80s, 90s, we can say, in order to have a little more concentration, to have a little more intensity, a little bit more sun direct to the grape. Now we think we did a lot of studies of that. We think that first of all, the grape needs to be on the shadow, not the direct sun, especially in the last 10 years where the sun is burning more than in the past. Other thing is that having the bunch of grape pending down from the pergola, the bunches usually are more open, more large, more wide. So the air can pass through easier, and there is no leaves in between the clusters, and that is fundamental for the healthiness of the grape. Consider that these grapes needs to be put to dry, so they need to be healthy. They need to be with no humidity in. Other thing, with the pergola system, the grapes are very far from the soil, so have a lot of air, a lot of wind. There is no humidity coming from the soil. With the Guyot, you are much closer to the soil, so you have a little bit more humidity. And again, for the drying process, it's much better to have a drier way. Then, I mean, it's all about the you can make quality in both the methods, in my opinion. If you are a good grower, if you are a good producer, you can make quality in the two sides, but it depends the style you want to make. I think I make an example. I think that if I use pergola, 99% I will use also the large barrels. If I use Guyot, I probably use the barrique. You know,
Mm-hmm.
to give you the sense of the style to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
with the different things that is it is well made in both the sides. So
right, right.
we are more in a classic way, more finesse, more elegance, less structure, more purity of the fruit, and with a side bag.
Mm-hmm. And the other question, like as you said, like you're always evolving, you're always like taking inspirations and making experiments. What do you envision for the future of Speri?
The future of Speri is first of all working on the details as we are doing, because it's 20 years that, I mean, 15 years that we are not moving with numbers. I mean, we are quite stable, but we are working only on the details and finding better and better wine. We are trying to improve a little bit in terms of time before releasing. So what we are doing, we do not want to grow with the aging, but we want to grow with the time that we keep the wine in bottle before releasing. Because with the style we have, that is always very fresh, very clean, very with a great acidity, we think that the best result is happening after a few years from where the moment in which we put in bottle. So
Mm-hmm.
one point is to have to keep the wine a little bit longer in bottle before releasing, and that is a big step, because in that way you need a lot of time, you need a lot of room, you need space, you need warehouses to keep the wine in the best way. So it's an investment that is crazy, but this is the where we need to work. We are also working to find a couple of hectares, 5 hectares somewhere in Valpolicella where you have a nice quality, possibly close to the Sant'Urbano, but at the
Mm-hmm.
moment it seems a very difficult thing to work with. And I think that that's it. I mean, I think that the best thing for us is being ourselves and continue to work in the best way we can. For sure, we don't have in our mind a new wine. We don't have a new product. We want to increase the quality of what we have to be very personal and to show the real essence of Valpolicella as we always did.
Yeah, it would be extremely unexpected if you told me now that you guys are going to make a Lugana. Um,
No way, no way. We know where to buy the good Luganas. We know where to buy the good Soave. We know where to buy all the good things coming from here, and we want to make good Valpolicella wines. That's it.
and it's a very honorable thing to do and to say. Um, and that's something that ties together like your whole winery and the whole experience that people can have with Speri is, I think, an experience of like this is honorable craftsmanship. Like this is craftsmanship in the best way possible. This is dating back from generations. There's like a large tradition in forming these wines. And if you drink them, you can experience like a little capsule of Valpolicella that is like contemporary, yes, but on the other hand, it also has like these old roots. It's
Yeah,
basically like old vines, basically,
yeah,
like
yeah,
goes
yeah,
goes back goes back a long time, and like the concentration. Well, no, not inside the wine, but like the
yeah,
ideal of
yeah,
concentration is there,
yeah, yeah.
because
Well, old
you
old
guys
vines are
focus.
old vines are good because they have a very deep roots and they do not suffer. So this
Yeah,
is what we need to do: having long roots and be faithful and be very clear. And it's something that it's easy for us now. But the good thing of our family is that we know where we are from, and we know that we've been there when Valpolicella was nothing. We fought, we had big fights to bring this crazy region that was making cheap wines to the top of the enology of the world. So, when you've been in this history, when you saw all the different part of this history, you work in a different way. It's not just business; it's respecting something that you have, and we feel it. We feel it a little bit on our shoulder, but it's a very nice to have it.
Yeah. It's I think you guys are being good atlases, like you're carrying the weight pretty well.
We have to.
Luca, it was a huge pleasure talking to you. We do have a question. About the now the three wines that we have tasted, all three of them, at least the Yoseleta is not listed, but you do grow it.
Yeah, we have some that we still use it somehow, but it's a very, very low percentage. Like in all our vineyards, maybe we have like 1%, 2% of Osaleta that is part of the historical grapes of Valpolicella. Was never mandatory in the in the appellation system, so is one of the optional grape of the region. We use it. It depends by the vintage if we use it and where we use it. For instance, with Amarone, but just to give an idea, Osaleta is a very dark, tannic, intense kind of grape. So it's very sometimes aggressive kind of grape. So if the vintage is too cold, we tend to use it maybe for Valpolicella Classico and not for the Amarone. If it's warmer, we use a little bit for Amarone because it's smoother than usual. So it's a kind of grape that you use where and if and when you need it. So it's, is part of the game, but it's not fundamental. Corvina and Corvinone, for us, they're usually between 70 and 75%. Rondinella about 20%. Molinara is 10% for the Valpolicellas and 5% for the Amarone and for the Ripasso and Superiore. So that is the key. Then, if you ask me, we have another 1% in our vineyards of Bigolona, Croatina, Dindarella, some crazy grapes that nobody heard about that, but it's part of the history of our region, and we still keep it. But I hate to make technical sheets because you have to put like 25%, 75, and it's not possible. It's not. I can tell you exactly what is planted, exactly, but what is in the wine is almost impossible because every year the production is different. Some years Molinara work best than Rondinella. Who knows? And and every year is a different season because warmer season you need some more on one thing, and cooler season you need some more of other things. But yes, for sure, we want to preserve also the ancient grapes like Zaleta and many others, for sure.
And they all serve flavors.
Excuse me,
Zaleta gives. I'm sorry. The person that asked has understood. I think the question was like this, not listed, possibly listed. We'll be trying to visit your winery tomorrow in a week, so 8 days. 8 days from now, someone will visit you and ask more questions about Osaleta.
Grazie. Please just give us a call or send an email. There will be me, my sisters, my cousins. I mean, even for visits and stuff like that, it's us directly that we do things. So come and we will be happy to show how we work.
Yeah. That is a good well, not last words. That means something else in English. That's a good ending, I think. it's always like the best way to experience a wine and the winery if you're actually there, I think.
Yeah.
So then some will probably make you understand the wines much and any say in the next 2 hours. It's I think there's like a sense of place in mind that is only understood if you actually are there.
Yeah.
But that's opinion. Luca, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for making these awesome wines, which are always like so much fun to drink, and the sense of time is unique to me.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for your time, and
Thank you.
thanks to everybody who was watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. The next Winzertalk is going to be with the Hofstetter Winery on the 10th of June, also at 7 o'clock. Thank you all.
Good.
Have a great night. I hope you all have a good bottle. I certainly do have
That's good.
a couple of good bottles.
Bravo.
Right now.
This is
And
how to do. This is how to do. So thank you very much to you to give me the chance to be with you through the online tools, and waiting to be personally together. That is always the best way to share a bottle of wine.
with a good meal.
Yeah, of course. Bravo. You learned that. Ok, grazie mille.
All right.